5 everyday glitches that prove something is seriously wrong. I didn't want to write this, I still don't. But someone needs to document what's happening before we all forget how to notice. My name is Dr. Eliza Weiss. I was, still am technically, a cognitive neuroscientist at Garfield University. My research focused on perception anomalies and memory formation. How fitting that I would be the one to notice when reality itself began to fray. It started with déjà vu, that uncanny feeling we've all experienced, the sensation that you've lived through a particular moment before. Most people dismiss it as a neurological hiccup, a brief cross-wiring between short-term and long-term memory centers. I used to believe that too. But 6 months ago, my déjà vu episodes increased in frequency and intensity. Not the vague, haven't I done this before? Sensation, but visceral, detailed premonitions. I would know exactly what someone was about to say before they said it. I could navigate unfamiliar buildings as if I'd visited them dozens of times. I could predict the precise moment a glass would fall or a door would slam. Concerned I might have developed temporal lobe epilepsy, I underwent extensive testing. EEGs, MRIs, PET scans, all normal. No seizure activity, no tumors, no physiological explanation for what I was experiencing. Then I started noticing other things, small inconsistencies, tiny fractures in the fabric of everyday life that most people immediately rationalize or forget. I began documenting them obsessively, and I realized these aren't random anomalies. They're systemic failures, glitches in whatever underlies our reality. I've identified 5 categories of these glitches, 5 phenomena that once you learn to recognize them, you'll never unsee. 5 everyday occurrences that prove something is seriously, fundamentally wrong with the world we think we understand. Read at your own risk. Knowledge cannot be unlearned. Glitch 1. The peripheral person. You've experienced this, though you've trained yourself not to notice. You're in a coffee shop, on a bus, walking down a busy street. In your peripheral vision, you glimpse someone who doesn't seem quite right. When you turn to look directly, they appear normal, just another face in the crowd. But the moment they slip back into your peripheral vision, the wrongness returns. Maybe their movements seem too fluid or too jerky. Maybe their features blur slightly. Maybe they seem to occupy a slightly different light frequency than everything around them. We instinctively avoid looking at these individuals too closely. Our brains protect us from the contradiction they represent. I've been tracking these peripheral people for months now. They appear more frequently in transitional spaces, train stations, airports, hotel lobbies, places where the human traffic is high and attention is naturally fragmented. Here's the truly disturbing part. They're increasing in number. On January 9th, I counted 3 peripheral people during my commute to campus. On February 16th, 7. By April 30th, 12. Yesterday, 23. I've developed a technique to observe them without triggering whatever corrective mechanism normally activates when we look directly at them. Using a carefully angled compact mirror, I can study them while appearing to check my makeup. What I've seen defies explanation. They move through crowds like sharks through water, purposeful, predatory. Regular humans instinctively step aside without realizing they're doing so. The peripheral people never collide with anything, never stumble, never show any facial expression beyond a vague, placeholder smile. And sometimes, when observed this way, they flicker. I followed one last week, a tall figure in a gray coat who emerged from the subway at precisely 8:17 a.m. for 3 consecutive days. I maintained distance and used my mirror technique to keep track of them. After exactly 12 blocks, they turned into an alley that, according to city maps, doesn't exist. When I reached the spot moments later, I found only a solid brick wall. The wall was warm to the touch. Are they glitches in reality or maintenance workers, background characters poorly rendered, or something monitoring us? I don't know, but they're becoming more common, less careful, easier to spot. As if whatever system is responsible for them is breaking down. Glitch 2. Missing time pockets. Check your phone right now, note the time. Now count to 60 in your head, maintaining a steady rhythm. Check your phone again. Did exactly 60 seconds pass? Are you sure? Time isn't flowing consistently anymore. It pools and eddies, speeds up and slows down in ways our devices can't accurately measure and our perceptions can't fully grasp. The phenomenon manifests most obviously in what I call missing time pockets, brief periods where minutes vanish without a trace. You've experienced this. You glance at the clock, 3:15 p.m. You take a single breath, blink, perhaps look down at your desk for what feels like seconds. When you check the clock again, 3:23 p.m., 8 minutes gone unaccounted for. Most people blame these incidents on zoning out or getting lost in thought, but I've been rigorously testing this phenomenon under controlled conditions, and the data is undeniable. I set up a simple experiment. 3 digital clocks, a computer display, a smartphone, and a radio clock, positioned side by side, a video camera recording them continuously. Me, sitting before them, maintaining complete awareness, noting the exact time at 30-second intervals. The results were chilling. At precisely 4:17:26 p.m. during my 4th trial, all 3 clocks simultaneously jumped to 4:22:39 p.m. 5 minutes and 13 seconds vanished instantly. The video recording showed no break, no edit. In one frame, the clock showed 4:17:26, and in the very next frame, 4:22:39. During those missing minutes, the camera recorded me sitting motionless, eyes open, apparently conscious, though I have no memory of that time. Even more disturbing, when I reviewed the footage at half speed, I noticed my eyes tracking something moving across the room, something invisible in the recording. These missing time pockets are expanding. What began as skips of seconds has evolved into minutes, and occasionally, hours. A colleague reported getting into bed at 11:30 p.m. and instantly finding himself at his breakfast table the next morning, with no memory of sleep. The continuity of our timeline is failing. Reality cannot maintain temporal consistency, and whatever moves in those gaps is becoming bolder. Glitch 3. Object permanence failures. When you set your keys down and turn away, they continue to exist. That's a fundamental assumption we make about reality. Objects persist regardless of whether we're observing them. That assumption is no longer reliable. I first noticed the phenomenon with my reading glasses. I would place them on my desk, turn to check a reference on my bookshelf, and turn back to find them gone. Moments later, they would reappear, sometimes in a slightly different position, sometimes exactly where I'd left them. I initially attributed this to stress, absent-mindedness, the familiar frustration of misplacing items. But after it happened a dozen times with various objects, I became methodical in my approach. I set up motion-activated cameras in my office and home. I began photographing objects before turning away from them. I placed items on pressure-sensitive pads that would record any movement. The evidence was incontrovertible. Objects were literally winking out of existence when not directly observed, then reconstructing themselves when attention returned to them. Most disturbing were the reconstruction errors. My blue ceramic mug would return with its handle on the opposite side. My keys would reappear with an extra key I didn't recognize. A book would rebuild itself with a slightly different title or author name, as if reality was struggling to remember the exact specifications of what it had temporarily deleted. The phenomenon extends beyond small items. Last Tuesday, I watched the administration building on campus disappear for 37 seconds. One moment it was there, a solid 5-story brick structure. The next, an empty expanse of grass as if the building had never existed. Students and faculty walked across the grass completely unaware, their paths adjusting to avoid a structure only I could remember. Then it snapped back into existence, its windows reflecting the afternoon sun as if nothing had happened. I was the only one who noticed. When I asked a student about the incident with the administration building, she looked at me with genuine confusion. Reality is conserving resources, removing objects from existence when not being actively observed. But the system is becoming sloppy, leaving evidence of its shortcuts. Glitch 4. Memory consensus errors. History is changing. Not in the abstract interpretive sense that historians discuss, but in concrete, factual ways that should be impossible. It began with small discrepancies. I distinctly remembered a childhood neighbor's house being yellow, but when I mentioned this to my mother, she insisted it had always been blue. When I found an old photograph to prove my point, the house in the image was indeed blue. Such disagreements are common, easily dismissed as faulty memory. But these discrepancies have been multiplying, becoming more significant, more widespread, and more disturbing in their implications. Major historical events are shifting. Collectively remembered facts are dissolving into contradictions. I've documented dozens of examples, but 3 stand out in their stark demonstration of the phenomenon: the Columbia Space Shuttle disaster. I vividly remember this occurring in 2003. So do my parents, my colleagues, and approximately 80% of the random sample I surveyed. But all official records, digital archives, physical newspapers, NASA documentation, now state it happened in 2004. When confronted with this evidence, many people experience momentary confusion, then revise their memories to match the documented fact: Nelson Mandela's death. The majority of people I've interviewed recall him dying in prison in the 1980s, yet official history records him being released, becoming president of South Africa, and dying in 2013. This particular discrepancy is so widespread, it has been named the Mandela effect, attributed to false collective memory. The title of the children's book series about the Bear family. Roughly half the population remembers it as the Berenstain Bears, while official publications show the Berenstain Bears. People become genuinely distressed when shown evidence contradicting their clear memory. These aren't simple misrememberings. They represent fractures in our collective reality, points where divergent timelines seem to have merged imperfectly. Most alarmingly, I've witnessed these changes occur in real time. During a history department lecture I attended, the professor confidently stated that President Kennedy was assassinated on November 22, 1963. 20 minutes later, while referencing the event again, he stated with equal confidence that it occurred on November 24th. When a student questioned the discrepancy, both the professor and the rest of the class looked confused. They had no recollection of the earlier date being mentioned. When I checked historical references after the lecture, some sources listed the 22nd, others the 24th. By the following morning, all consistently showed the 22nd again. Reality is being edited, revised, patched, and the changes aren't propagating consistently through all systems. Digital records, physical documents, and human memories are falling out of sync with each other. Glitch 5. The Echo People. This is the most recent phenomenon I've documented, and by far the most disturbing. 2 months ago, I began noticing duplicates of people I know. Not doppelgangers or lookalikes, but exact copies appearing briefly in impossible situations. I first saw my department chair, Dr. Harriman, entering his office while I was discussing a research proposal with him. Through the window behind him, I clearly observed an identical Dr. Harriman unlocking his door and walking inside. The Dr. Harriman sitting across from me didn't react, didn't notice. When I froze mid-sentence, he prompted me to continue, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. Since then, I've witnessed 37 similar incidents. My neighbor collecting her mail while simultaneously visible through her kitchen window. A student answering a question in class, while an identical copy of him sat 3 rows back. My own mother calling me on the phone while I could see her working in her garden outside my window. I call them echo people, duplicate renderings of individuals who already exist, appearing simultaneously in multiple locations. Unlike the peripheral people, these duplicates are perfect copies, down to clothing and mannerisms. They perform normal expected actions. They interact with the environment appropriately, but they shouldn't exist. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. Then I managed to document the phenomenon. During a faculty meeting last week, I recorded video of Professor Jenkins both sitting at the conference table and walking past the open door in the hallway outside. The recording clearly shows both versions of him existing simultaneously. When I showed him the video, he became distressed, then confused, then angry. He accused me of digital manipulation, of playing some kind of prank. When I persisted, his nose began to bleed. and he suddenly couldn't remember why we were talking or what I had shown him. I've developed a theory. The echo people represent processing errors, multiple instances of the same subroutine running simultaneously when only one should be active, as if the simulation, or whatever underlies our reality, is experiencing critical resource management failures, accidentally spawning duplicate executions of the same entity. The implications are staggering. If people can be inadvertently duplicated, what does that suggest about the nature of consciousness, of individuality, of the soul? Even more troubling, how do I know which version is real and which is the echo? Is there even a meaningful distinction? 2 days ago, I saw myself in a cafe across the street from my office. I was sitting by the window, working on my laptop, exactly as I had planned to do later that afternoon. When I approached the cafe to confront this duplicate, she looked up, saw me, and her eyes widened in the same shock I was feeling. Then she vanished. Not gradually, not by walking away, she simply ceased to exist between one heartbeat and the next. The other patrons didn't react. The chair she had occupied was empty, as if she had never been there. Am I the original encountering a glitch duplicate? Or am I the echo, temporarily achieving independence before being deleted as an error? I no longer know. These 5 glitches, peripheral people, missing time pockets, object permanence failures, memory consensus errors, and echo people, represent systemic failures in whatever constructs or maintains our reality. The phenomena are accelerating, increasing in frequency and severity, becoming harder to ignore or rationalize. 3 possible explanations exist. Our universe is a simulation experiencing cascading system failures. The membrane between parallel realities is thinning, causing bleed-through effects. Consensus reality is generated by collective consciousness, and that collective is fragmenting. Regardless of the cause, the implications are the same. What we experience as stable reality is neither stable nor reliably real. The fundamental continuity we depend upon, of time, space, identity, and history, is breaking down. Why am I sharing this? Because awareness may be our only defense. Once you recognize these glitches, you can begin to navigate them, perhaps even exploit them. I've found that focused attention can sometimes prevent an object from disappearing. Direct observation can occasionally stabilize a peripheral person into normal parameters. Strongly concentrating on historical facts seems to anchor them temporarily against revision. Consciousness itself may be the patch that reality needs. Or perhaps documenting these phenomena is accelerating the breakdown. The observer effect is well established in quantum physics. The act of measurement affects the system being measured. By noticing these glitches, by cataloging them, by bringing them into collective awareness, am I hastening the collapse? Is this document itself a bug in the system? I don't know. But something is seriously wrong with reality, and the failures are becoming too numerous and significant to ignore. Yesterday, I witnessed a 6-block section of downtown simply stop. People, vehicles, even birds in mid-flight, all frozen in place for 73 seconds. When movement resumed, no one seemed aware that anything unusual had occurred. No one except a single man across the street who met my gaze with the same horrified recognition I felt. He mouthed what looked like, "You see it too," before a city bus passed between us. When the bus completed its passage, he was gone. Tonight, I'm meeting with 3 colleagues who have responded to my careful inquiries with their own accounts of experiencing these same phenomena. Safety in numbers, perhaps, or a consolidation of dangerous knowledge. Either way, we need to establish protocols for what to do as these glitches continue to worsen. If you're reading this, you're now part of the awareness. Look for the patterns, document what you observe, find others who see. And if you encounter a woman who looks exactly like you, don't approach her. Don't acknowledge her. Just remember that one of you is an error that will soon be corrected. I can no longer be certain which one of us that is. Dr. Eliza Weiss, Department of Cognitive Neuroscience, Garfield University. Appended note: the original document ends here. It was found on a university server, last modified 3 months ago. No one at Garfield University has any record of a doctor, Eliza Weiss, or a Department of Cognitive Neuroscience. The university itself has no memory of ever being called Garfield. It has apparently always been Hartfield University. When images of Dr. Weiss were recovered from server backups and shown to faculty members, 3 professors independently reported having seen her duplicate walking across campus last week.